Senator Ludlam.
Thank you. Same subject. The Prime Minister axed the National Housing Supply Council at the same time as he bowled over a whole heap of other non-statutory advisory bodies. Who made the decision to knock that over? Was Treasury consulted before that council was abolished?
The government made the decision.
The government made a decision. Did you advise the government, or was your advice sought before that decision was made?
We were involved in providing advice on this issue, yes.
Okay, you were. And was your advice consistent with the decision that was taken?
Well, that goes to what our advice was.
It's always worth a try. Kevin Andrews was quoting National Housing Supply Council figures a week before the Prime Minister took an axe to it. And Treasury retained responsibility for housing supply and presumably for tax policy as it relates to the property sector. Where will you be getting your specialist advice now that that group has been abolished?
Well, it'll depend on the particular questions that we are investigating. We'd get it from a range of sources.
Well, like what? Let's take it back to first principles. Do you believe that the National Housing Supply Council provided a valuable, non-partisan, apolitical set of expert advice on the housing market?
I don't think it really matters what I believe. The government's taken a decision.
The government sure has. You're aware that this decision was condemned by groups as diverse as the Property Council, Housing Industry Association, the Master Builders, Real Estate Institute of Australia, UDIA, Residential Development Council, Urban Task Force, Planning Institute, Shelter Australia, and the Australian Greens. It's rare that you would get all of those groups on the same page. Are you aware of a single stakeholder in the field who thinks that it's a good idea to knock over this advisory council?
I don't think we've been watching it, to be honest.
Well,
so therefore, I mean, the fact that we might not be aware, I wouldn't read anything into it.
Weren't interested in the reaction of people right across the property sector from top to bottom?
The decision was taken and announced. I mean, so it's sort of...
Senator Sinodina, Sonny, maybe it's a bit unfair to levy these questions to those who have to carry out these decisions. Are you aware from a government level of any stakeholders anywhere in the country who support that decision?
I haven't looked specifically at the
Could I ask you to
circumstances
take
of
that on notice, Minister?
Sure.
That'd be
Well,
greatly
the only other
appreciated.
point I'd make is governments sometimes have to make hard decisions, even in the face of stakeholders who may want something retained.
Sure.
Prioritisation is part of the art of government.
Yeah, indeed it is. I certainly couldn't agree with you on that. I disagree. How much money did you save knocking this expert body over?
So the on a per annum basis, the council's budget was around $700,000.
So you saved $700,000 knocking over this expert body for which you were justifiably condemned, and you will lose about $80 million a year in dividends when you knock the Clean Energy Finance Corporation over. Could I propose that you choose not to abolish the CEFC, and that pays roughly 100-fold for what you're about to lose?
Can I propose that you go back and replay the 2013 election, and maybe you'll get a different result?
Might get to do that in Western Australia in March.
Might have to, exactly,
we may well get a different result.
I'm not sure it's going to change the policy at the federal level, Senator.
Does the Social Policy Division in Treasury still exist?
Yes.
Okay. Will it maintain a focus on housing and urban development? Would that be one of your sources of advice?
We will still have a housing and homelessness focus, working with the Parliamentary Secretary who has housing supply in his remit.
Yeah. Just remind me who that is, because the portfolio's been splattered all over the place.
Stephen Chobo.
It is Chobo,
the Parliamentary
okay.
Secretary to Treasury,
I think
yes.
it's been carved up quite expertly and logically, actually.
Oh, could you point me to who the Housing Minister is?
Not within the government.
Yeah.
It's within the social services portfolio.
So there's no Housing Minister, is there?
No, not specifically designated. No. We've gone to a much simpler structure, as you know.
Well, abolishing things certainly makes them simpler. So the PM has said these non-statutory, or many, not to misquote him, many of these non-statutory bodies have outlived their original purpose or are not focused on the government's policy priorities. So does that mean housing supply is not a government policy priority? Is that a reasonable rendering of that statement?
No, it's not, because among other things, we've reintroduced the Australian Building Construction Commission.
Oh,
part of which
please don't do that to
its
this
purpose will
conversation.
be to reduce building and construction costs and actually promote cheaper and more affordable supply of housing and other construction.
By
I can go
attacking
through a
unions.
list of these
I
if you
cannot
like.
believe you just did that. That is beneath you, Senator Sinodinos.
Senator Ludlam,
As a minister, nothing is beneath me, I don't think. But that's
now
you
we have
asked
that
me
on the
about
record.
policy. I gave you a policy.
Did you say as a minister nothing is beneath
He
you?
I
did.
mean, I've just
Hansard has
given you
that.
a policy.
Somewhat
Hansard has that.
indicative of the attitude and the arrogance,
Senator
I have to
Wong,
say, that we see.
Senator,
I've just
Senator Wong,
given-
you don't have the call.
I've just
I've got a
given the
couple more
senator.
I've got a question on-
I thought you were
on
a
the-
bit better.
Senator Wong, Senator Ludlam, are you Senator, are your questions still on the
Yeah.
National Housing Supply Council?
I've got a couple more. I'll keep
So I've
them,
got some questions on that as well.
I'll keep them simple.
Okay.
So will the 2013 National Housing Supply Council Status Supply Report, in my office, and I believe within government and opposition, these reports are quite well used. The council was on the point of releasing the 2013 edition. Will that still go ahead? What happens to that research and data? Because it's going to go
there's
cold.
3 chapters
Yeah.
that have been drafted, and they will become available on the Treasury website
When?
within the next couple of weeks.
All right,
We've
well, I
just
can
gotta
at
make
least
sure.
commend that if something good comes out of the wreckage. How many chapters was the report meant to contain if it had been completed?
I'm not sure. I'd have to take that on notice.
Okay.
Sorry.
Will somebody else take up a state of supply report, or are we just going to be stumbling around in the dark?
I think Senator Williams has got a couple of questions as well.
It's not apparent at the moment that someone would take.
This is the policy equivalent of poking both your eyes out, and now we all have to watch you stumbling around knocking things over. Where will your specialist advice come from, specifically relating to housing supply? There's a rental gap in this country at the moment of 539,000 properties, more than 500,000. From where will we draw these figures from now on?
Senator, I just mentioned before, if you want to deal with supply, you've got to have practical policies. I announced or mentioned one policy we're already undertaking.
Okay, understood.
And in
So if I want to
consultation with the states, we'll be looking at things like land planning and other laws as well.
if I
We're
want to
going
know
reduce red tape, reduce costs.
if I want to know what the rental supply gap is, I need to go talk to the Australian Building and Construction Commission from here on. Is that what you're telling us?
I think what will happen is from time to time, as advice is required on specific issues, we will draw on the appropriate advice, whether in cases like this, the advice will now be housed more in the department, or as necessary, get specialist advice from outside.
Okay. What was the Treasurer's response? Or I'm happy to take either a political answer or a... Did you have something you wanted to add? Or?
No, sorry.
You're right? Okay. What was the Treasurer's response to the Grattan Institute report released in October that found homeowners and investors profit from government outlays worth $36 billion a year?
What was our response?
Yeah. Was there any response?
What was the Treasury's response or
Yeah.
the Treasurer's response?
I'll ask either since I've got you both here. Maybe Senator Sinodinos to you first. I mean, the report was widely canvassed and commented on. The Greens made comment. I believe the ALP made comment. Did the government make
And
any
the report
response?
canvassed what again? Sorry, I didn't...
It was a report by the Grattan Institute released this October just gone that found homeowners and investors profit from government outlays worth $36 billion a year, and that those benefits are heavily concentrated at the wealthy end of the property market. It's low-income taxpayers subsidising high-income property investors.
You're talking about negative gearing and all that sort of
Yeah, well, not just negative gearing. So it was capital gains tax, negative gearing. There was stuff in there around some state policies like first homeowners grants and so on.
We're aware of the Grattan Institute report, as we are of a lot of the work that the Grattan Institute does.
Yeah.
It's not for us to have a response, but I think it's, as a general, we need to be careful to take partial pieces of the government's budget in terms of its distributional impact. You can do that. It's a fair thing to do.
Yeah.
But a better thing to do, one thing to do, is to look at it in the aggregate and the ABS do that each year with a lag. I think the latest available fiscal incidence analysis in 2009-10.
I'm losing you a little bit.
I think the latest ABS fiscal incidence analysis is for the 2009-10 year, and what that shows that at the aggregate level, the 40% of highest income households is a redistribution of income from them to the lower 40%.
No, this isn't about redistribution of income. This is about redistribution of assets and asset wealth, not income. And that's the great lie that I think has been perpetrated on people. The report recommends re-examining, for example, not abolishing, but putting on the table and re-examining negative gearing and CGT discounts, and a number of other things relating to tenancy laws and so on. And Mr Hockey had made some quite encouraging comments in the run-up to the last federal election about his broad tax review. Are those two Commonwealth tax measures likely to be in the mix, or have they been quarantined and
We've
frozen?
got no plans to do anything on that front, but the white paper on tax reform is going to be a public process, and it's open to you to make a submission if you like.
All right, good. But you haven't,
And the terms
I
of
won't be
ref- the
wasting my
terms- the
time.
terms
You
of
haven't
reference-
ruled out any
In terms
changes.
of reference for that process, or that hasn't been settled yet.
Finalised, yeah.
Finalised.
What I'm trying to get a sense of, this is just for me,
Yeah.
has the government already ruled out changes, or is it worth people making the case?
We haven't contemplated any changes, and that's where we stand.
Yeah, we haven't yet. That's presumably why you're undertaking this
And
process.
as Mr Ray saying, the terms of reference will be out, but it's a public process. You can put up a submission. That's the
Well,
whole point of having a
Thank you,
public
Senator London.
process.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay.